AMD and Nvidia are seeing their sales increase as businesses and hyperscalers are spending huge sums of dollars building out their data centers optimized for artificial intelligence. Investors are asking me which one I think is the better buy, AMD or Nvidia. I'll answer that question in this video by comparing these two AI stocks across several important financial categories, including revenue growth, return on invested capital, operating profit margin. I'll also compare these two on valuation and share with you which one I think is the better stock to buy for long-term investors. Let's get started.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
The first category I wanted to compare these two on is revenue growth. And I wanted to go back a decade to give ourselves a long enough time period to see performance across many years. And interestingly, they both started at around $5 billion in annual sales in 2015. But since then, Nvidia's growth has exceeded that of AMD. Nvidia's revenue has grown by almost 30x between 2015 and the most recent trailing 12-month period, from $5 billion up to $149 billion. Phenomenal growth, to be sure. AMD has also increased its revenue nicely by nearly 6x, from $5 billion to $29.6 billion. Nvidia's compounded annual growth rate over this time is 44.2%, while AMD at 23.5%. Interestingly, Nvidia's business, a larger share of its business is focused on the data centers optimized for AI, while AMD's business is still split roughly evenly between its data center AI business and its other segments, including personal computers and laptops and gaming consoles and the Internet of Things products. So AMD's business is focused more so on categories that are not growing as quickly, and that's bringing down and weighing down its overall growth rate. The next category I wanted to compare these AI companies on is return of invested capital. This measures how good a management team is at using company funds or investor funds to invest in products and services that generate profits and cash flow. In this regard, Nvidia is world-class, generating returns on invested capital of over 141% over the previous 2 years. Now, I believe these levels of ROIC are unsustainable for the longer term, but for the near term, I wouldn't be surprised if Nvidia generates these types of returns over the next 2 years or so, while the market growth rates for these data centers optimized for AI continues to exceed the longer-term levels. Meanwhile, AMD's ROIC is below historical levels at less than 5% for the previous 3 or 4 years, and I expect these levels will improve for AMD, but I don't think AMD's ROIC levels will approach that of Nvidia because of those categories that are weighing on the company's profitability and growth rates. The next category I wanted to compare these two on is the operating profit margin. Again, Nvidia demonstrating its superiority over AMD, generating an operating profit margin of 58% in the most recent trailing 12-month period. That's up from 17.5% in 2015. AMD has improved as well, improving from negative 8.8% to 8.4%. I expect AMD's operating profit margin will approach closer to 20% over the next few years as the semiconductor industry recovers from the cyclical bottoms approached in 2022 and 2023. I don't expect AMD's operating margins will approach that of Nvidia, and I don't expect Nvidia's operating profit margin to remain up here around 60% for longer than 2 years or so. I expect its operating profit margin will decline closer to 50% over the next 5 years. But over the next 2 years, I expect Nvidia could sustain these levels of operating margin, again, as a result of those phenomenally high growth rates in this category. So now that we looked at important financial metrics, let's take a look at valuation, starting with my proprietary discounted cash flow valuation models for AMD and Nvidia. My intrinsic value per share calculation for AMD stock, according to my proprietary model, has the business worth $136 a share. The current market price is $164 a share. So according to my calculation, AMD stock looks slightly overvalued. When I conducted a similar calculation for Nvidia stock, my intrinsic value per share came to $156 compared to the current market price of $174. Nvidia stock looks slightly overvalued or fairly valued when applying a margin of safety according to my calculations. Now, when I look at valuation on a forward price to earnings basis, Nvidia stock trading at a forward PE of 35 looks undervalued based on the characteristics of the business. Previous decade compounded annual revenue growth rate above 40%, operating profit margins around 60%, returns on invested capital above 140%. A business with these characteristics, in my opinion, can reasonably trade at forward price to earnings valuations around 50 and still be reasonably valued. So at 35, I feel Nvidia stock is undervalued. Meanwhile, AMD is trading at a forward price to earnings of 32, and given its characteristics and its prospects looking ahead, AMD stock looks fairly valued at this valuation according to its performance metrics, right? They were improving, but they weren't great, and they were significantly behind those levels of Nvidia. So to make my decision here between Nvidia and AMD, this decision is not looking very close. In fact, I can comfortably say that I would pick Nvidia over AMD if I had to pick between these two companies today. Nvidia has far superior performance metrics when it comes to the critically important category. And when we look into the marketplace, Nvidia has the far superior product in the data center market optimized for artificial intelligence. Nvidia's products are more highly demanded than AMD's products. Nvidia's products command a more premium price compared to AMD's products. And Nvidia dominates the industry with an estimated market share between 80 and 90%. So all signs point to Nvidia if I had to pick between these two companies on which one is the better AI stock to buy today for long-term investors. Of course, performance could prove otherwise, but looking at these critically important metrics, it's an easy decision for me. I pick Nvidia over AMD. In fact, I own Nvidia stock and I don't own AMD stock.
Hey everyone, so many of you have been asking about my investing strategy, and I'm excited to announce that I've written a book that's available for sale now that describes my 6-step investing framework for evaluating stocks. I've added the link in the description below.